Auto, and I had a really good year. So here are some favorites from it. Starting with books. These are not in any order, it's just alphabetical, and they're also not all new. These are just new to me, so I read them this year is the only criteria. First up is Dogs of Summer, which is infectiously charming. It's a coming of age that borders on the age where like you're losing your innocence, but it's still very deeply childlike. There's female friendship, there's forming a relationship with your body, and balancing life on an island that's slightly surreal. It's a great book. Then there's Giovanni's Room, which is this meditation on identity and self and sexuality and queerness and the things that we owe ourselves and owe others and how they don't always overlap. It's deeply personal and really moving. It's my first Baldwin and I was blown away. Shout out to the lovely Katie James. I read this for her book club alongside some really nice people that I'm very glad to have met this year. Then there's Checkout 19. I adored this book more than I thought that I could like a book, period. This felt so made specifically for me. It's everything that I want out of a story. There's autofiction, and it's just a smart, thinky woman who's really funny and has a huge breadth of knowledge about art and books and recounts her life and her relationships, whether they be interpersonal or just internal relationships to writing or just to the world itself. I don't know how to describe this book. This book amazed me. It's so good. Then there's Assembly by Natasha Brown, which is a depressed woman moving staple. I heard ravings about it earlier when it come out, but finally got around to it and it lives up to the hype. I cannot wrap my head around how something this short packs that much of a punch without being dense or heady. It just has so much to say and it doesn't waste any time in delivering this really smart message about corporate America and blackness and relationships through a semi-unreliable narrator. 2 thumbs up. Then we have The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty, a favor that snuck in right at the end. I finished this yesterday and I will be thinking about it well into next year. It was so smart. Nothing I can say about this book would do it justice. It's so delicate and ornate and well thought out and structured and gut-wrenching without being like trauma porn. Every character is believable and beautiful, and this book just does such a great job in showing the boundaries of self and power dynamics and social systems that bind us all, and just showcasing our relationship to life through our relationships to each other. Just wow. Just wow. I'm still reeling from it. It's too fresh to like really process. It was so good. Next is Paradise Rot. This book is so gnarled and twisted and sick, and I loved it. It's horror that's done so differently than what I was used to, and I just really fell in love with how sound is used in this, which is a really brave choice to have the source of the horror for the book be something that you have to translate across a different medium. It worked, and I was so unsettled and uncomfortable reading this. Great surreal elements, and just overall a really cool, claustrophobic, sapphic horror story. Yeah, I love this. Thank you to Campbell for recommending me this in the first place. Loved it. Next is Pure Color. This one snuck in right at the end when I was making the list, because the further I get away from a book, I can tell whether I really liked it or not. The experience of reading, I tend to kind of over-romanticize, so having some time to cool off, if I'm still constantly thinking about it, I'm like, okay, fine. And this book has just grown on me. I remember it more and more fondly every time. I think that it has really sincere and just intimate messaging. It's hopeful, it's romantic, it characterizes death and grief in a way that I find really moving, and it was just a very singular reading experience. It felt so intimate. I know I already said that, but that's just, I can't think of a better word for this book. Then there is A Single Man. This is, to me, the new benchmark of a good book. It's so smart, so cutting, and fast-paced, It's written so strongly and deals with so many different topics that are all handled in a really impressive degree. There's loss and sexuality and love, connection and grief and academia and power imbalance and obligations to each other. From the first page, I was really engaged with this, all the way to the last one that left me damn near catatonic. It's so good. I know I keep saying that about every book, but all of these books are so good. Thank you to Alex, Cherry Cordial, for telling me about this. It lived up to the hype. The Hour of the Star. This is like the opposite of Assembly in the sense that how can something this small be so dense and still be rewarding? It's unlike anything I've ever read. It is amazing. I still won't say what this book is about. It's too short to like give anything away. Go into it blind and redefine what telling a story means to you. Bluettes. Yeah, I mean this is just in a different echelon. It's about the color blue, but it's also like a meditation on a relationship and just seeing a life that's splayed out in front of you in these little intersections of theory and reference after reference to art that just creates this kaleidoscopic sort of fractaling book that shows so many different fragments of life, like capital L life. This is the first book that I've ever felt the need to annotate. It's great. It's so good. Housekeeping. This is just a child narrator done right. It's so tender and pure and slightly off-putting, seeing life through the eyes of the youngest member of a family, which the family is both outgrown and retreated into this house, which acts as the centerpiece for a generation that reconnects and grows apart from each other. It's just really beautiful and so good. NW, different perspectives all coming together that intersect for very brief stints with each other, sometimes just as background characters in each other's story, while the city itself of NW becomes a character. It's non-chronological, it's so well thought out and organized and delivered. It plays with form in really interesting ways. It's both depressing and comedic. It's like a dramedy, I guess. There's some flawed characters, but seeing things from so many perspectives makes it easy to empathize with everybody. I would forget that this was fiction at certain points just because of how much detail goes into these relationships. My first Zadie Smith, 2 thumbs up. Then rounding out the list is Dead End Memories. Clarity, perspective shifting. The women in these stories all learn lessons one way or another, whether it's surreal or just direct, but her writing is so melancholic and wistful and also romantic. I mean, there's darkness that undertones a lot of these stories, but it always feels hopeful and like there's love reflected in it in some way. I can't really describe the experience that I had reading this because it doesn't come across in like a plot synopsis, but reading this was just so good. Outside of just reading in general, outside of books, just when I think about the whole year, reading this was like up there. It was just exactly what I needed, like at the time that I read it. Yeah, it just changed things for me. I'm really grateful that I read it and that I was recommended it, so thank you, Cami. Yeah, those are my favorite books of the year. 13 of them. I had a pretty good reading year, but I am so excited for next year because I have a lot of books to get to, and I just know that like there are some favorites back here hiding for me, and I'm so excited to get to them. Alright, so on top of just reading, I also watched a lot of movies this year, and I listened to a lot of music. And for these lists, I want to keep it to stuff that just came out in 2022. Otherwise, I don't even know how I would whittle it down. It was not that good of a year for movies as I thought it was. Maybe it's just because I watched so many and I went to the theater so many times. But looking at like the list of stuff that came out this year, at least not ones that like I super liked. I enjoyed a lot of the movies I went to see, but like favorites, there's like a handful. And it just feels kind of lukewarm to be like, hey guys, Nope was pretty good. or have you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once? So I'm not going to talk about these movies, but these are them. It is what it is. I mean, boring, but can't really think of other ones that came out this year. Either I didn't see them or they were just okay. Okay, so for albums, I went through and I did a list of 50. 50 is too many. I'm gonna try and whittle it down to 25, but to do that, I need to listen to some albums for a while. So I will come back after I listen to music for a couple of days. Okay, back. Wiser, older, less albums to talk about, but just barely. I have, I think, 35, and that sounds like a lot, but this year was so stacked for music. I am impressed I cut it down that much, because oh boy, oh man, there's a lot of good albums. I will do my best to keep it short, like one sentence about each album, but if any of it sounds interesting, I wholeheartedly recommend every album I'm about to talk about. The first couple are going to be just alphabetical by artist, and then the top 10, we'll go into a little more detail, and those are going to be ranked intentionally. Starting off, we have Always with their new album, Blue Rev. This is an indie pop outfit showing that 5 years later, they still got it, making stuff that is equally upbeat, syrupy, and blown out. Then there is the new Barry album, Barbara, which is indie pop and alternative and acoustic and really intimate, really catchy, really infectious. Black Midi's Hellfire is dizzying and larger than life, really, really grandly arranged and orchestral at times, really intense, also social. This is a really long sentence, I'll stop. Really good album. Blade's new album, Spider, is frenetic and experimental, really current, feels very internet age and boisterous. Then we have another Blade record, although it's his collaboration with Echo 2K, Crest. This one barely didn't make my top 10. I really, really enjoyed this record. It's super sugary pop music that has dark undertones, really intricate, really ornate, sometimes ephemeral, sometimes just really frenetic, and doesn't take itself super seriously, but when it does, it's really moving. Charlotte Adigéry's Topical Dancer, funky, groovy, irresistibly danceable while still being poignant, and really well written, very current, really good. The next two albums are both by Cities Aviv. They are Man Plays the Horn and working title for the album called Secret Waters. Think Slauson Malone or Standing on the Corner, just very left field avant-garde hip-hop that focuses more on the instrumentation and blending really soulful psychedelic elements. It's so good, and some of his best songs to date are on both of these albums. Definitely check them out if you're into experimental hip-hop and haven't heard these already. Dark Life by Death's Dynamic Shroud is an electronic album that is steeped in computer age and vaporwave leanings, done really grandly, ornately, orchestrally even. A lot of lavish production on this, a lot of the songs on the longer side, and I think they're well worth the runtime. Florist's self-titled Florist is folky and acoustic and intimate and almost kitschy to the point of how earnest it is, but there's something refreshing about getting something this sincere and this hopeful. Okay, so for this I kind of cheated and just put Griselda as one spot because they had so many good albums that even just choosing between them as like a collective was impossible. So whether it's about Conway the Machine or Benny the Butcher, West Side Gun, or to a smaller extent Boldy James, I think they put out such killer projects, and you cannot talk about rap in the year 2022 without bringing them up. So here are their flowers. Pick whichever one you want, and it's worth making the list. It's just some of the best stuff. Grimy, gritty, ruthless, the coolest production. Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Home Shake had a really great EP with Haircut. It is syrupy, bedroom pop, just done really well. Super infectious. It definitely got stuck in my head for months at a time and kept coming back to it. So on the shorter side, but worth checking out. Jenny Vall's Classic Objects just goes to show that she is my new favorite person, apparently. She wrote one of my favorite books and then also made one of my favorite albums in the same year. This is really acoustic and ornate, really wry and funny and well written and just really impressive. Again, she's too powerful. How can she do both? I don't know, but I'm amazed, honestly. Little Simz' No Thank You is just more really refreshing UK rap. If her last album wasn't enough to make you consider her one of the most exciting voices in hip hop to date, then I mean, this album just further goes to show that she has more left in the tank. Also, only British people should be allowed to rap. It just sounds so much better. Macabre Plaza, Out with the Old, In with the Taboo is indie rock, indie pop. I don't really know what genre it is, mostly instrumental, but so infectious. This is a short EP, kind of like Home Shake, but again, it just got stuck in my head and I kept coming back to it throughout the year. Really great. Nyla Frianya's Painless also barely didn't make my top 10, but this is just a great album. It put her on the map for a lot of people, myself included, and I'm just so excited to see where she goes from here. This is indie pop done really, really interestingly, with a lot of different inflections of soul and R&B and jazz and singer-songwriter. All of it done well, really catchy, really, really cool. Definitely check this one out. Petrol Girls Baby is a hardcore post-punk garage rock band that is British, I think, and female-led, but just super, super good stuff in this. If you're into the angry lady aesthetic, you're not going to want to miss this one. It was kind of under the radar for me, but once I heard it, I connected with it instantly, and it just barely didn't make my top 10. But yeah, if you're into that genre, if you're into that wheelhouse, definitely don't miss this one. Pinegrove's 1111 is indie rock done well with folk and country and acoustic tinges throughout. Hypnotic, slinky. It's undeniably good, and I'm just pleasantly surprised because I've never really been a fan of Pinegrove, but this album is undeniably good. Motomami by Rosalia is so good. Probably one of the best pop records to come out this year. If you like reggaeton, if you like dancehall, if you like the Latin sound, I mean, you've probably already heard it, but if you haven't, Saoko is one of the best songs to come out this year, in my opinion, and the rest of the album is not too far behind. Silvana Estrada's Marchita is so intimate, and her voice is so soft, and everything just sounds so delicate and acoustic, and you could just hold it in your hand. It's so pretty. Even if you don't speak Spanish, I recommend this. I think you could still get something out of it. It's, again, just really beautiful. Sweet Trips Seen Unseen is a collection of 50 B-sides and rarities that are released now that the band has broken up. Really love their sound. If this went under the radar for you, definitely check it out. I think a lot of people would like it if they knew about it, so now you know. The Comet is Coming Hyperdimensional Expansion Beam is futuristic electronic fusion jazz. Super exciting, super forward thinking, unlike a lot of stuff that I've heard, especially this year. If you're into contemporary jazz, do not miss this one. Toro y Moi Mahal is funky and funny and slinky and head nodding, super groovy, just jam inducing pop that is, again, so good. Toro y Moi is one of my favorite bands, and this album is no exception. I think it definitely leaned further into the sort of comedy that was introduced on Outer Peace, and it's just a good album. It's really cohesive. I'll stop talking about it because one sentence, but thumbs up to this one. Wise Blood and In the Darkness Hearts Aglow is performed beautifully, arranged really vastly, and just all around the board really, really, really pretty. It has some kind of Americana tinges to it, in the sense that it kind of reminded me of Father John Misty, the pure comedy album especially, although not really as comedic, but regardless, it is really good, especially for being one note, and I'm not saying that in like a backhanded way. I think the note that it's hitting consistently is really, really pretty. And last but not least for this sort of rapid fire album part is White Armor's Music for Weddings. Just really good ethereal instrumental kind of ambient project that is wistful and romantic and just really, really pretty. I think White Armor especially is pretty underrated in terms of the sort of Drain Gang cinematic universe, but it's a good album. Okay, the top 10. My top 10 albums of 2022. I cannot state enough how good of a year for music 2022 was. All of the other albums I just listed are so, so good. Okay, without further ado, number 10 is Blue Blue by Sam Gendel. Ambient, jazz, instrumentals, these are so good. Guitar forward, which is on the rarer side for jazz, and it's just so mesmerizing and impressive how Sam Gendel makes music. Fresh Bread was one of the best albums last year, and this one snuck in right at the end of 2022, but since it's come out, so many listens. If you like jazz, do not miss this one. Coming in at number 9 is The Forever Story by Jid, showing that hip-hop still has a lot of legs, and this is equal parts commercial and conscious, very contemporary, and just from a technical standpoint alone, so impressive in terms of like cadence and flow switches, and having something to say on top of it all, just being so damn catchy. And the production is great, and it's so detailed and rich and intricate and blah 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 blah. It's so good. If you like rap, even if you don't like rap, I mean, this is just so good. Coming in at number 8 is Louie by Kenny Beats. This is the best beat tape of the year, hands down, and it is not as distinguished as other beat makers like J Dilla or Madlib, or to a lesser extent someone like Knowledge or Flying Lotus, but this is so consistent and just airtight front to back. The runtime is only 30 something minutes, so it's so concise and to the point, and it never overstays its welcome. The highs are so infectious and catchy. There's some really great live production, like live instrumentation from Kenny himself playing guitar at some points, and some really great vocal contributions from JPEG Mafia or Slow Tie, or even just vocal flips, samples, like sampling Shira Smalls. The list of like intricacies and small details in this very short project make it just full to the brim of love and intention, and it's so good. I'm really glad that Kenny has something this good under his discography, because I feel he's so talented as a producer, but none of his projects really fully reflect that in terms of consistency, and this, like I said, is front to back airtight. Coming in at number 7 is Fossora by Björk. This is the Mushroom Gabber album we didn't know we needed until we had it, and goddamn, I am glad to have it. Her 10th album, and what a run she's had. It's amazing to see her constantly reinvent her sound. It's been years since her last project, and this did not disappoint for me. I could not have imagined what this sounded like in terms of mixing a lot of woodwinds with these heavy electronic rave drums. The sound just completely blew my mind the first time I heard it, in terms of just boundary pushing and what being experimental really means in the modern day when everyone is trying to be. This album is so sick and gnarled and twisted, and also beautiful, and it's just her singing on these like rotted toadstools about motherhood and isolation and reconnecting with your emotions. It's a kind of victory lap in terms of just what she manages to do so flawlessly. Great album. So cool. Like unbelievably cool. Yeah. Coming in at number 6 is Sudan Archives, Natural Brown Prom Queen. I really don't know what to say about this album. I just instantly connected to it and fell in love with it. It is such a cool sound that I just gravitate towards. In general, it just blends so many different facets of music into the coolest pop record, I think, of the year, and I cannot stop listening to it. It's so good. It's so good. Like, this is such a... I really can't say anything other than just it's so good. So I won't, but it's so good. Okay, top 5. Picking up steam and running out of ways to describe how good something is. Number 5 is Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. This album is so crushing and also kind of hopeful, and like it just tinges me with this weird wave of emotions every time I listen, and different songs will be something that I gravitate towards, and it's just like endless waves of catharsis. It's so good and just like intensely affecting. But with Woods leaving, their frontman, their vocalist, leaving the band, representing like lightning in a bottle of something that might not be able to be replicated, and fingers crossed for the band going forward, but how do you top this, especially losing such a core, like integral member? Regardless of what happens, this album still exists, and I am so grateful for that, because it is really one of a kind. Yeah, if somehow this managed to go under your radar, check it out. Number 4, God Save the Animals by Alex G. This is controversial, but it might be his best album. And I know that he has such like a cult following of so many different albums. Like regardless of which one you connect to it like talons in. This is a damn good album, and I didn't initially think so. This is one of the albums that grew on me, I think, the most since it came out. But after listening and listening and listening, I just cannot like get enough of it. And this is sort of his leanings further into a more commercial sound, a more like accessible sound, and I think it's done so well. This is some of like the best cohesive songwriting that he's had, like in terms of an entire album front to back. I do think he has like higher highs on different albums, but track 1 to the very end, this is so consistent. This is maybe his best. It feels so wrong to say that out loud, but this album is so good. Coming in at number 3 for me is Sick by Earl Sweatshirt. This album went under the radar, I feel like, for a lot of lists, just because of how early in the year it came out, that people kind of forgot about it, but I didn't stop listening, and 12 months later, I am so into this record. I've listened to it definitely over 100 times, and it's so good front to back. It's really concise, 10 tracks, 25 minutes, and it's Earl sounding so focused and just honed in with a really clear message about fatherhood and COVID-19 and political unrest, and how music has to be used for revolution instead of entertainment. And on top of all of that, the production is so good. Kind of a return to form for Earl, kind of stepping back into normalcy after being in a very experimental field for a while. And normal for Earl is still very left field for most hip hop, so the production is still experimental, but not so much as Feet of Clay or some rap songs that was really leaning into that sort of ambiguity and boundary pushing. This has production from Black Noise or from Alchemist, and has some guest features from Armand Hammer or Zay Loopers. So many good songs on this. Some of his best verses to date, Tabula Rasa or Vision or Fire in the Hole. I mean, 2010 was also a great single to lead off with. For the amount I listened to it, easily it's top 3 for me. Number 2, it is Dragon New War Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief. This album also came out really early in the year, but again, I did not stop listening to it, and it has just gotten better. It's one of the best albums of the decade. I know that we're only like 2 years in, but like the last 10 years, it's up there. It's my favorite album in a lot of different aspects, and barely was not number 1. For the majority of this year, it was number 1, but something swooped in last minute and kind of stole the limelight. It's damn near perfect in terms of being backwater and bluegrass and blown out and shoegazy, acoustic and intimate and singer-songwriter and indie rock, indie pop. I mean, it does it all. It does it all, and it does it all so well. This is a pretty long album, and it doesn't feel that way at all. Every song has something so like unique and infectious, and if you haven't heard it, if you want to dip your toes into something kind of outside of your wheelhouse, if you don't really listen to country or like folk music or indie singer-songwriter, like check this out. And if you do like those genres already, you have to listen to this. Like you have to. And if you've already heard it, I mean, amen. And my favorite album of the year, Jockstrap's I Love You, Jennifer B. The most exciting album to come out for me this year, the one I keep coming back to, the one I'm so stoked on like what it means for the band going forward. I've known of Jockstrap since Wicked City, but the buzzings and the kind of interest I had wasn't that intense, especially not to the degree of this album. This 10-track album has just left me reeling in terms of wanting to see them in concert, follow them going forward, to get new music from them. In terms of just what it means for pop in general, or like music being experimental, I think this just goes against the beaten path in a really interesting direction that focuses on kind of really grand orchestration, on these really unpredictable and chaotic electronic tinges and like instrumentals. There's an 18-person band backing them on these 2 classically trained musicians that are going damn near operatic vocally, and each song is completely different from the rest without it seeming incohesive. Some of the songs are acoustic, being just vocals and a harp. Some of them are like industrial rave house jams that are like 5 minutes long and so good. Some of them are just the most infectious like pop hits. Some of them are like disco infused, some of them are like Bollywood infused. I'm completely at a loss for how to convey this verbally. Do yourself a favor, listen to this if you like experimental music, if you like pop music, if you just are interested in hearing something completely unlike anything that came out this year. Check out Jockstrap's I Love You, Jennifer B. It's my favorite album of the year. Taking a breath. With that, the lists are done. And I just wanted to say thanks for a couple things, because this year has been really good, and a lot of that is due to the reception of this channel. Not solely, but it's definitely been a highlight of the year for me. And I would be remiss if I didn't kind of take a step back and say thanks to some of the people who welcomed me into the booktube space, and some of the people who I've been lucky enough to interact with throughout the year. So I want to thank 5 people. My first thank you would be to Benjamin Journal, or Ben Green, however you know him. And if you don't know him, I suggest that you get to know him, because he is so lovely, and I don't think this channel would exist without him. The story goes that I made my first 2 videos to an audience of like 5 viewers, and from there I was kind of discouraged, and I just did it for fun, but I didn't really like see it going anywhere, because there wasn't like that much of an incentive or like a reward. So I made those 2, and then I was like kind of done with the idea of like, oh, okay, that was fun. But Ben ended up finding my channel somehow and ended up sharing one of the videos on his channel, which was thousands of times bigger than mine. And so some people like filtered over and then like left very encouraging comments or just like interacted with me, and that was really, really cool. And from there I had like an incentive to make more videos, and the more that I did, like the more people would like amass, and like eventually like it kept going on its own. And now I'm like 5,000 people later. I really do owe it all to Ben, because I don't think I would have kept making videos if it wasn't for the sort of push that he gave me indirectly. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that this community is so kind, because it's just like a very selfless gesture that just went a long way, and I still really appreciate it. I'm still trying to buddy read something with you, Ben. I know that both of us keep kind of vocalizing that we want to, and time just keeps going. But yeah, whenever you want to, just say the word, because I would love to. The next 3 thank yous are all kind of in the aftermath of my channel like hitting double-digit subscribers, and just some really fond memories that I have of like the early infancy of this channel, interacting with 3 people in particular: Modern Ajuma, Lucy Rutherford, and Nathan's Nook. All 3 of them are so nice and have channels that are honestly way better than mine. They're much more deserving of like the audience that I have, but they're so sweet and so nice, and just like this sort of chain of encouragement of like leaving comments on each other's videos and just interacting in a really wholesome way. Yeah, I just think of really fondly, and I just appreciate you guys a lot. And I know that I'm like lumping all 3 of you like in one bubble, but like individually, thank you all. Lucy for like encouraging me to kind of planting the idea, at least, of me like talking about movies on this channel, because I remember seeing her do it and I really enjoyed it. Nathan for kind of paving the way for like vlog content, just really encouraging comments, going back through each other's like backlist of videos. I just, again, thank you very much. And then Modern Ajuma just being like one of the nicest comment leavers ever on my channel every time. It's just so like intentional and thoughtful, and has definitely like implanted certain ideas of me like paying it forward, and how much it can matter to like just leave a very nice comment on someone else's video. I'm just filled with so much gratitude, just like thinking and like reflecting on how much like I appreciate everyone that I've interacted with, and like it's just such a lovely community, and I really am glad to be a part of it. Okay, those are 4 of the thank yous, and the last one I would like to give to Jalen of The Bar in the Bookcase for being the first collaboration thing that I've ever done on BookTube. The invitation to do the Secret History Book Club was really kind, and it's just so surreal to like interact with that many people that like I watch on my own, and like be in the same call with them, like talk to them, whether it be like CJ or Anna Wallace Johnson or Biblio Sophie or Jalen himself. Like to be in the company of like that cool of a crowd just like for me was like a really full circle moment of being like, oh damn, like I've kind of made it, I believe. Yeah, I just really appreciate it. I think it was really, really cool. And again, buddy reads, I'm so bad at like keeping up with like any idea of it, but if anybody outside of even those five, like, and there's so many other people that I would love to thank, but that's not to say that like I haven't enjoyed getting to know so many other people, but I just feel like if I start listing people, then I'll like never stop. But yeah, if I've interacted with you, hopefully that you know who you are and know that I appreciate you, and like it's been really cool to either meet you or like just discuss back and forth, even if it is like in a really fleeting way. I just love so many of you guys, and yeah, I will try and leave it at that before I start crying on camera. But yeah, just a really good year, and thank you guys all for 2022. I hope 2023 is just as good, and I will see you all later.